third story here, which I think is a huge challenge, direct challenge to the Constitution, and that is, and it's trying to, and I want people to understand the timeline. So the Pentagon has put into place a new, I'm gonna be generous here and call it a tighter press access policy. And what it does is they want to require credentialed Pentagon reporters to, quote, to get permission or sign a pledge before reporting any information that's gathered inside the building, including some unclassified material that would give the Defense Department broad authority to revoke passes for violations. So basically, if you have somebody in the Pentagon that says, hey, this something little shady's going on here, and you get a leaked document to help you finish the reporting your story, which is, frankly, I hate to say, is pretty standard operating procedure for any reporter, right? We never get any official documents from the government. It's usually some whistleblower or sometimes a staffer that, you know, maybe they want to do the right thing, or maybe they just want to get their boss, right? I don't know what their motive is to leak, but if the information is solid, it helps you report a story. What the Pentagon wants to do is criminalize that. And if you get caught doing it, then they want to get you off the premises completely. Now, you might ask, why now, right? We already know that there's been right, that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has been getting some terrible press. And I, for, you know, we have the weird where he shared classified material on a signal. And a lot of that came from leaks, and he started firing people that he thought were leaking. So now, instead of trying to fire the leakers, because I think he realized that that was sort of a game of whack-a-mole that he would never win, could they just simply get rid of the reporters from the Pentagon, right? Thinking that that will somehow prevent people from leaking. Buddy, I could tell you, you know, the more you try to stop this, the more it's only going to encourage people to find other ways to get these things, other ways to leak these out. But I do think it's a pretty important to understand a bit of the timeline of this story, okay? Because I think there's a real reason why this happened when it happened. Let me give you this timeline. On September 17th last week, so this is just, so where am I at here? So last Thursday was last Wednesday was September 17th. The Wall Street Journal published the following report. Pentagon lawyers raise concerns over Trump's strikes on alleged drug boats. These Venezuelan drug boats where the military has been launching strikes against these boats without any congressional authority whatsoever. They claim some authority having to do loosely because they've somehow designated these folks as narco-terrorists, and that this falls under the same thing that would allow them to go after al-Qaeda and things like that. On September 19th, the Washington Post reported on legal concerns, internal legal concerns about the strikes themselves. Pentagon officials voicing uneasiness that their opinions, their legal opinions about whether these extrajudicial killings were legal or not, that they were being sidelined. That happened on September 19th. And when did this story come out on these new roles? So that story came out on the 19th, which means the reporting happened on the 18th. And lo and behold, on the 19th, the Pentagon press secretary decides to come up with these new rules. Because what were the important sources of these stories to both the Journal and the Post? It was classified Pentagon information from people that worked at the Pentagon. These reporters did not get permission from the press, the person who runs the press shop there, Sean Parnell, and therefore they wanted to create a situation where that if you somehow used anonymous sources or classified material that was not approved, again, I don't know in what part of a free country with a free press that this would be a situation that would be acceptable, they suddenly put out these new rules. So what this is really about is they don't want there to be stories that there are a lot of people raising legal questions about whether the president has the authority to just drop bombs on a boat he decides to tell people in the Caribbean is, we know they're narco-terrorists. How do you know? Well, we just know. What's your evidence? Don't worry about it. Oh, we saw the evidence. Once we blew it up, there were floating bales of fentanyl and things like that. Again, this stuff's illegal. This stuff's unconstitutional. He does not have the authority to do this. I promise you that if if at some point, right, somebody is going to have a due process, is going to bring a case before our court system. It'll be some family member of somebody who was killed on one of those boats. And I don't think they're going to have very good legal standing on any of this. There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/ToddCast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win. So once again, to understand, I just want to make it clear what the legal questions are involving these bombings of these boats. Is there authority under U.S. law or international law? Right now, it is unclear if there's any legal basis for these strikes. The use of legal force in international waters against unarmed or not obviously armed boats carrying drugs rather than weapons has been extraordinarily unusual. It's something we haven't seen. There was no attempt to board these boats, arrest, right, extradite. That would have perhaps given a little more clarity as to what would be allowed and what not. Under the law of war or the doctrine of self-defense, there usually needs to be an imminent threat. And there's no clear imminent threat. Now, I think that the president would say the threat of these drugs coming into the United States was going to harm more Americans, and that is the imminent, quote, imminent threat standard that he believes that this could be met with. But if these strikes are accepted without scrutiny, it could lower the bar for what military force in similar international waters could be done without any sort of judicial process. And we already may be seeing a huge misuse of this. And where does it end? Right? If there is no court scrutiny over this, no congressional scrutiny of this, we know very little about this. There's been very little interest in Congress on trying to get some oversight about what they're doing. So it's and by the way, now Trump is, and this everything always goes back to immigration. So over the weekend, Trump issued a warning to Venezuela on Truth Social, and he said that the nation immediately must accept all the prisoners and people from mental institutions, which includes the worst of the world insane asylums, that Venezuelan leadership has forced in the United States of America, or you will pay, the price you pay will be incalculable. So basically what he's saying is, hey, I'll stop these bombings if you take a bunch of these Venezuelans that we're trying to deport, if you want to take them back. Now, by the way, this whole weirdness of Trump, I think it's looking more and more likely he just doesn't understand what the word asylum means. These folks were seeking asylum in the United States. I think he hears the word asylum and assumes insane asylum. And so this is why he has, maybe he does it on purpose, but I don't think he has. He probably would claim he's doing it on purpose now, but he seems to conflate those seeking asylum with people who are mentally ill and who, quote unquote, belong to an insane asylum. So in his head, all of these folks seeking asylum in the United States were somehow released from Venezuelan insane asylums. I know you're thinking that can't be the case. And I'm saying it's Donald Trump.